and warmly welcome everyone to our first student housing summit in Toronto, in Canada. My name is Martin. I'm from BONARD, and I would once again like to thank you all for taking the time and coming today. We're going to having multiple sessions, presentations. We're going to share some data. We're going to discuss the student housing topic today, and you have all the program, so you know what's coming. But for the beginning, I would also like to welcome our CEO Samuel here and ask him to kick it off with a welcome speech. Samuel.
Good morning to everybody. Can the microphone be okay if I'm in this distance?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. Should I take it? No, this is better. Canada is a superpower when it comes to educational supply. So the quality of education and the number of international and domestic students that Canada has. Canada is playing the same league as UK or Australia, or in a certain sense very close to US in terms of study permits. On the other hand, when it comes to student housing supply, Canada is playing a very minor league. So we used to say that it's on a level of Switzerland. When we compare Canada to, let's say, UK, the student housing supply is at a level of probably 25%. Australia, about 60%. So very behind of the other educational superpowers. And we all know that this has become a topic for politicians, media, public, us. And we are now in a point of time when there is only one way to build more supply. Nothing else will help. In this sort of situation, not like we have a solution, but we can contribute to a solution. And we have had several conversations we at BONARD with many of you over the last 2-3 years when we entered Canada as a company. And maybe at this point I will introduce a bit of BONARD so that you have the context. We are 16 years old, independent research firm focused on student housing. We have about 82 people present in 25 countries, 255 cities, and concluded over 825 projects that we advised practically. We monitor 14,000 assets and 2.2 million beds. And from this sort of sheer experience and data, we came to Student Housing Canada about 3 years ago after delivering certain data and transparency from independent point of view. We have been asked by many of you to put this conference together. Conference is not our business. We are a data firm. But we have independent position and a lot of connections to sort of put together this forum. So we facilitated, also thanks to our partners, which I would like to thank, Harrison Street and Jonathan, that not only sort of helped us conceptually, but also with many connections that he could bring over here, but also all our other associate partners, so Forum, Candy, Forstay, CMLS Financials, and thanks to Goodmans for the premises that we are using today. It was a very generous provision to all of us. So we had that conversation that started about autumn last year. We put the concept together and came to this format. So about 100 people, top executives, from all parts of the sector, so institutional investors, private equity, family offices, those who are invested or those who would like to be invested in student housing. We have developers here, we have operators, banks, or other financiers, and media. And all these, plus universities, of course. All this together So demand, supply, investors, construction brings a good crowd today for knowledge sharing and connections. I remember these events 10, 13 years ago in France, in Netherlands, in Australia. They significantly helped to boost the transparency and development of the sector. So we believe that today this will be a relevant contribution to future of the sector, to more supply to be delivered. As we will see some great panels on investment, development, operation, education. We will have some market intelligence provision that Martin will present. And I would like to sort of inspire or stimulate you from the experience that when we were part of these conferences a long time ago in markets that were in this level of maturity, people usually shared quite a lot and concrete. So if you can on the panels or questions that you will ask, be as specific as possible, be sort of as concrete in example stories. The more we can share, the better it helps to have transparency and development of the sector. Of course, we all have some business secrets and competition, but as much as you can and as much I can kindly ask, this will tremendously help to learn from each other, and that's what we are here for today. So with this, I hope you're gonna enjoy the day, enjoy the conference, and once again, welcome.
I would guide you through the standard dynamics and the KPIs as we usually do for the other markets as well, which is a standard supply-demand imbalance, where are the rents, what's the pipeline, and I will comment to some of these KPIs, how does it compare to the other markets that we are active in. So you have also not only understanding what's happening in Canada, but how people are solving the issues or the problems in the different parts of the world. Just very quickly about us. Some already told about the company, so I'll probably not go deeper to that. My name is Martin. I'm the Business Development Director at BONARD. And it's my great pleasure to be standing here today. It's been some years we've been active in a Canadian region, and we try to bring this transparency, and we are committed to continue doing so. And over these years, we managed to be part of multiple conferences, webinars, not only in Canada, but of course globally. And our main mission here in Canada is, of course, to bring not only transparency, but also experience that we have from other markets. So not only those 265 markets we monitor, but also from all the operational assets we've seen, all the projects we've been working on, all the things that we saw was or not working elsewhere, with, of course, respectfully adapting to Canadian environment according to student demand, their origin, circumstances of the market, product preferences, and so on. During the years, our main clients, as Samuel mentioned, the type of them, you can see some of the brands that we work with. So to understand who are our main clientele, coming from pension funds, institutional money, private equities, but also universities, also developers and operators, where we help them to not only assess the research and the data, but also independently assess the opportunities they might have on the table, give them the third-party view, and guide them to the development or operation process. In Canada, during those 4 years, we focus mainly on the 24 biggest cities, which we are mapping now on a regular basis. We see almost 856 student housing purpose-built assets that are both on and off campus in those territories, which represents the number of beds you can see, and as well covering all the universities and colleges. And today's presentation will be mainly focusing on those main 24 cities, on which you'll be see some differences and benchmarking to each other. I'll start with the demand in the country. And as Jonathan mentioned, we see the students are growing. And it's not only international, but also domestic. And there's been, for the last 5 years, if we take a look at a compound annual growth rate, 1.5% growth for the total number of students. And more importantly, international students has been growing for the 5 years, more than 8% CAGR. To compare it with the rest of the world, such a growth, especially in international students, is now putting Canada in the number 1 globally. It's more than UK, it's more than Australia, and you probably know that the United States is having a little bit of a different direction nowadays. But the market is not only increasing the total number of students, thankfully, to international. We see domestic students are still a huge part and very important part for the Canadian student housing and Canadian market. And these numbers marginally continue to grow as well. So we see the demand is there, it's growing. And even with such a number that we already have here, you can compare the country to 2+ million other countries of the students, which are UK, France, Australia, and similar. So scale in the terms of demand is there. There's going to be indeed temporary changes in the next couple of years due to announcement. We believe it's temporary. It's focusing not to all of the institutions. You know, it's probably mainly private colleges. But even in the situation I'll present you today, you will see that even without those changes, we already are facing a situation of the market that we, on the provision rate and on the ratio between the students and supply, are much far behind any other countries globally. Going into city, so we can see the total top 10 cities by total and by international students. Obviously, Toronto leading the way in both ranking, followed by Montreal and Vancouver. Also looking at a map, you can see that the huge demand still coming mainly from Ontario and Quebec, which remains the top destinations for the students. When it comes to Vancouver, the UBC is of course the main driver with other universities. But also in general, we see this both categories has been increasing over the last 5 years. Some places like Windsor and other places has been actually growing international students in a double digit, and the rest has been internationally growing in a higher single digit, and very stable growth in the domestic students, which were between 1% to 4% across all the cities. So we have a demand, and how does supply reflects to it? We have a comparison for 2 years for the total number of the beds in selected countries that we're monitoring, and cities, sorry. So we have about 154,000 beds under the offer for students now. Comparing to the 2 million market, it's really marginal. If you just then take a look at the map, you can see that the majority of the beds are still, once again, following the demand. So it's mainly Ontario and Quebec. And you can see that the ranking of those cities of how many beds are there under the offer. So Waterloo, as Jonathan mentioned, and rightly mentioned, has more beds probably than some of the other cities, and also within the ratio compared to the students, and you will see later on how does it compare. But what I wanted to show you probably more is the differences between on and off campus. So if we go to off campus, we'll end up at 44,000 beds in 2023. Comparing to the total amount of the beds we have on the market, we'll basically see probably 30 to 70 ratio, which means 30% of the beds in Canada are provided by the off-campus, whereas the rest is provided by the on-campus players. To give you an example of other countries, in the UK, you would find 60% off-campus, 40% on-campus. In Spain, you would find 65-35, Australia even more, 70-30. So you can see how big of a difference is there and how still the market is driven mainly by the on-campus players, and we see a huge opportunity for the off-campus to add additional beds. And you can also see in the provision rates. So provision is a metric that compare number of students versus number of the beds that is available there. So obviously, if there is a higher number, it means the market is more saturated and has more beds. Waterloo is leading the way. So it's having a 35% provision. But first, let me start on the country level. So if we take a look at what's the provision rate for Canada as such, and comparing to the other markets, I'll start with those. UK is now currently roughly at 30%. Continental Europe is 17%. If you go to France, you'll be seeing 15 to 16% as well. Canada is sitting now, according to our data, at 10%. So we can also see, compared to the 10%, that mainly the sizable cities and the biggest student cities like Toronto or Montreal are far away even from the average of the country. Montreal is sitting at 5%, whereas Toronto is 8.8%. Looking more in the off-campus, so to analyze how does the off-campus beds contribute to the total beds and to the international students and domestic students, you will see the situation is even worse. And that's reflecting what I mentioned before, that the majority of the beds are still provided by the on-campus players, whereas off-campus, places like Victoria and Windsor, there is none. Something is coming in Windsor. There are some developments, should be open soon, but even with these openings, we don't see that situation is improving a lot. And once again, to give you an example, the provision rates in UK for the off-campus is sitting at 60% nowadays. So to comparing with Canada, you can see how far behind is every single city now. So Waterloo was catching up on the 30% total provision, but for the off-campus, it's only 25%. So even at the off-campus, Waterloo is not catching up with the more major market in the other parts of the world. So let's take a look at the pipeline. And our team is monitoring all the pipelines and all the new applications that are, of course, publicly announced or not under confidential. And we're now seeing 71 assets across all Canada that are coming to the market in the next years, which should bring about 22,000 plus beds. Looking at it by the city, Vancouver is leading, so it's having the biggest amount of beds, thankfully to UBC and their developments mainly. But if we just take a look at more again on the off-campus, and we exclude the on-campus, you see that's 39 assets and less than 10,000 beds. And it once again correlates a little bit with the provision rate and the proportion and ratio that we have now. To put in numbers, pipeline of the off-campus is now 40% versus the total pipeline, whereas 60% is still driven by the on-campus. So slight improvement according to the 30-70 ratio we're having operational. So there is slightly more, but at the end of the day, the pipeline is basically not enough and is not catching up. And we took a look at it, what's the prognosis of the students, how this pipeline will solve this situation. And from the calculation, we saw the total provision rate should improve with adding of those beds only by 0.5%. So the provision will be not 10, but 10.5%. And for off-campus is only 0.1. So you can see that this pipeline, as Jonathan mentioned, we need more developments, we need more beds, for which we need more capital, and this will be probably the main discussion, and that's why it's good to be all in one room, so we can discuss how we can make this pipeline bigger and boost this. If we take a look at those off-campus, how many are already coming to the market? So on the construction, it's more than 6,000 beds that should be coming. So majority of that is already under construction, but we all know that the construction might take longer due to various reasons. So this is also probably something that we'll discuss later today. I'm going to follow up with rent levels now. And that's a very interesting thing when we compare especially to the other markets. For our data, we always monitor every single asset, and we always monitor every type of the room that is under the offer in these assets. So we have understanding of rent levels for every different product type under the offer in Canada. And here on this slide, you can see what are the averages for Canada by top 10 cities by the number of the beds. On average, for all the off-campus and on-campus, I will use a single studio as a benchmark. We're achieving 1,300 across Canada. If you just take a look at a city, Ottawa is actually the city with the highest amounts, so more than 1,600 per month on average. And if we take a look only how does it work in a off-campus, it's 1,600 on average. So you can see the off-campus trying to deploy higher quality, better quality of the product is achieving also higher rates in many of the places. And this was really interesting to see, especially this number, 1,600, because when we compare this number to other markets, we are comparing Canada with London, with Australia, with Spain. These are the figures that we're seeing in Europe. These are the rent levels that many of the assets are achieving in Milan or Madrid. And these assets are new builds, new developed, a little bit more advanced. So I'm trying to say that Canada, with such an early stage, is already rent-wise at a level of more major markets. And we see, as Jonathan mentioned, that eventually the client is parent, the student is customer, right? So these clients want to have their children in a safety environment. They want to have peaceful mind that their children is using the premises and is everything taken care of. And they're willing to pay for the better quality. The podium in Kingston is just a great example that Jonathan mentioned. So with this type of the products, and also respectfully to Canada, we see that there's also difference between the product offering compared to the rest of the world. So it's still like many older stocks using a lot of single rooms, 2 to 5, or even different parodies that they share the bathroom, they share the living room, etc. While we, at the different locations, Australia, Europe, we see this privacy for students is becoming also more important. Single studio is becoming a really strong product for them, for developers, for investors, and for tenants. Obviously, you need to respect who are you building for, where the students are coming from. We know that Canada is very strong in terms of Indian students, but also Chinese, also Europeans from France, also Philippines. And need to respect that according in the product deployment and the developments, which we'll probably talk in more details today. So to sum it up with rents, with the products, given the stage that Canada is now, we see there is a space in I'm going to switch to hotel terminology to deploy 3, 4, and 5 stars premises all across the Canada. And some of the players are already trying to get bigger scale. And what we did, like we did in Europe, we monitored all the off-campus players, and we analyzed the key brands in the country, like we did in Europe, based on the operating brand and with the understanding of their sizes, locations, so territorial footprint, ownerships, investors, etc. This is just a snapshot of it. All the further details are in our platform. But just to compare, we have 55 portfolios in Canada today, which are off-campus and which are having 2 or more assets operated under one brand. In Europe, it's 337. So that's the first benchmark. But the second biggest benchmark is that we only have one bigger portfolio, which is 10,000 plus, which is the campus living centers. So the guys are basically all across Canada. And then we have only one portfolio, which is in a range of 5 to 10,000, which is campus student living, as you can already see from the map. Once I choose it, these portfolios mainly coming from Ontario. But more importantly, is that the portfolios are still relatively smaller. There is still place to develop more. There is still place to add more beds and consolidate, and also kind of prepare these packages for the bigger tickets and the players that are looking in the market but missing the scale. At the same time, just scrolling down, you can see that majority in the numbers, not in the beds, but in the number of the players are still even less than 500 beds. So these are all the players that are trying to develop more. They're getting more and more assets, but the scale is just probably at the beginning. So first of all, it's great to have these players, and second of all, now is the time to build it up more and to bring more scale to the market. And this will hopefully help all the transactions. So we just selected few because to put a full list, it will be probably not such a big difference. But we all know that there's been some transactions here or there. So we just selected some of examples like Harrison Street and others. did some acquisitions. So there is some movement on the market, but at the same time, there is like lack of some opportunities that people are trying to source and look at. And when we compare it with some other markets, we see much more transactions, obviously. It's been some period of time now, and it's not only here, it's a macroeconomics that transactions slow down, but hopefully we'll see some light at the end of the tunnel soon. We saw a couple of bigger transactions. We had a Maple-Tree in Europe. We had a KKR and Blackstone in the US, all happened in the last 3 months. So there is some movement happening, and hopefully with a bigger scale, with the more developments, with the more players getting involved in Canada, we'll see more of those also in that region. I will just wrap up with one kind of a key finding I was, which just stuck in my head when I was at a conference in the US. The discussion was there, that we're like now talking about the student housing, and people are complaining that the leasing is a little bit slower probably this year for US, and the rent levels growth is not there where they hope it to be. And then one panelist just stood up and he was telling us, but guys, 5-10 years back, we were facing 90 low or mid 90 occupancies and 2 to 3% year-on-year growth of the rents. That was standard. And now look at the market. Always 100% and higher digit or higher single digit or double digit increase of the rents. And we're complaining. So I think the market is performing great. It of course gives a pressure on the rents because of the demand is much bigger. But fundamentally, from just not only the statistic you've seen here, from the imbalances, but also from the rent growth and from the case studies from other markets, we are also truly believing in the market, and we see a huge potential and opportunities in Canada. I will wrap up with that. That many people, when we came with Samuel on the first trip in Canada, talking to many off-campus players, it was really resonating to us that one of the main reasons people was telling us that market is not moving the direction they wish for is there is a big lack of information flow, of market data, of research, and similar. So people were struggling to underwrite, to find the comparables on which they can rely and would be basically certified. So we invested into that, and we managed to create an interactive platform for Canada. So all this data you've seen here is basically coming from online source, which is our database for Canada, and we are trying to fill that information flow and to enable you all to have access to this platform, which is enabling people to check feasibility quicker, to check the cities quicker, to have all the comparables in one place 24/7. So if you all need, of course, to test it, to trial, feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to help that. And as well, we are happy to continue with other initiatives like the one we have today with Harrison Street, our associate partners, to not only help with information flow via data and research, but also such a conversation they'll be having today, maybe also following up with tonight. And so we can all come together and share the information as much as we can. So thanks for the attention, thanks for the time. I think I managed to catch up a little bit, and we're now going to follow up with an investment panel. Thanks.